Fantastic. Right. Good morning to you. Good morning to anybody watching. Right. As I said, you're going to be wondering, who are you? Right. There's two of us that you're going to encounter today, myself and Dave, who's at the back, ably managing the desk. And he's going to be helping us this afternoon when we actually start getting into developing your blueprints. And you guys are going to have to do some work. So rather than just listening all day, you're going to have to get your thinking caps on. You're going to have to recall all the things that God has said to you, and we'll start looking at actually mapping some of that out on paper. And it's really important to get some of it out on paper, because then you can start to see and crystallize actually what it is that you think your blueprints and your mandates are. So why have I been asked to speak? Several reasons. Firstly, I'm a member of the Venture 3 alongside with Mike and Becky. So I'm part of the leadership of the church. We have the overview of the blueprint for what freedom does. And freedom does several things, which I'll explain a bit more probably later on for those of you who don't know. Why else have I been asked to do this? Well, because I am the CEO, director of the outworkings of the projects that we actually have here. And we've got 4 organizations, and I'm responsible for managing all of those with teams from different people who actually run those. So the outworking on earth comes under my remit. So that's why Mike has asked me to speak a bit about that today. So when I was trying to figure out what to talk about, which is also always really difficult, because Mike covers so much so quickly. And I've listened to him over the last couple of days whilst doing other things, and it's like, yeah, I was going to talk about that, and I'm going to talk about that. But it won't matter too much if I come back over some of the ground that he's already covered. Partly because I'll probably give you a completely different perspective on it, and partly because it never hurts to reiterate and just get things back to memory that you've heard them the first time. Okay? So the brief I was given was a title, On Earth as in Heaven. Do whatever you like, Nigel. So, okay, first thing, what is the first thing we should do when we're given a brief like that? Well, let's step in and go to God for a mandate. So I went into heaven and I got a mandate. And the first thing that God spoke to me about was, you need to go back to where you started in this journey. You need to go back to where you became aware of what it means to outwork a mandate on earth. So I'm going to do that, and I've called it Lessons from Joshua. So we'll recap on some of those things. So to get started then, let's just take a look at what you've hopefully picked up in the last couple of days. Probably feels like more than about 48 hours, doesn't it? Yeah, I can see some tired faces here already. Yeah. So all of the teaching about government should be preparing you to administer and manifest blueprints and mandates. Are we agreed with that? Cool. Do we feel prepared to do that? No. Okay, that's fine. So the heavenly aspects are only one half of the equation. Have we figured this out yet? Yes, we have. Lots of sage nodding around the room. Okay. So just as we need to do things in heaven to be governmental, we need to do things on earth as well, right? So Mike's covered all of that. Also, just because you get a blueprint and mandate in heaven does not mean it will automatically happen on earth. Who's discovered that so far? Yeah. So you have to accept that you are the key to the manifesting bit. So whether you feel important or not, you are. In fact, if you're going to manifest the blueprint, you're fundamental, because God has given you something for you to do. You have to also administer it. If you are not in any kind of role in your life or your work life where you administer something, you may find some of those things challenging. But if you step back and look at how you run your own life, you have to administer your own life. Don't you? You've got to pay bills. You've got to make sure you've got food in the cupboard. You know, if you've got children, you certainly got to do a lot of administration. So you need to sometimes just think of those skills in a different way and apply them to how you're going to run a blueprint and a mandate. But you do have to be governmental. Hopefully, Mike has explained what it means to be governmental. One yes, thank you. That's good. Yeah, fantastic. So he talked about manifesting and administering, yeah? Have we got a complete understanding of what that means? Because we talk about it a lot, don't we? I mean, one of the things that you know, Mike uses these lovely verbs. We're going to manifest and we're going to administer. And I think we kind of go, yeah, I kind of get some idea what that word is. but do we actually know what that means? Yeah. So to manifest is to show something clearly through signs or actions. One definition, but actually there's some really important things in there, clearly through signs or actions. So you've got to do something, and it's got to be understandable to people who are seeing it. So when something manifests, it is obvious. It becomes clear and obvious. So if whatever you're trying to manifest is not clear and obvious, you haven't quite achieved it yet. Right? So you have to also think about to whom does it need to be clear and obvious. If it's just yourselves, that's fine. But if it's the world at large, or a people group, or some organization that you want to interact with, you have to make sure that whatever it is you're manifesting is clear and obvious to them. Just because it makes sense to you doesn't mean it'll make sense to them. Okay. So to administer, when someone administers something, such as a country or a kingdom, a law, or even a test, they take responsibility for organizing and supervising it. Oh, did you see that last sentence?
Yeah.
They take responsibility for organizing and supervising. They take what? Ooh, yes. How often do we like to avoid that one?
Yeah.
You can see some nods around the room to that. Yeah, we want to be part of it, but we don't necessarily want to own it and be the one accountable for it, do we? Well, guess what, people? You got a blueprint, you get a mandate. You are responsible for organizing and supervising it. Okay, so for the avoidance account, if you haven't picked this up already, we have to do the organizing and the supervising. Good. Nobody's left the room yet? So we're all right. Okay. So quite simply, that's known as ruling. Yeah. So when we're talking about having a kingdom mandate, we're talking about bringing the kingdom to earth, heaven to earth. Ruling is supervising and organizing and being responsible. Okay. But we rule from our heavenly thrones of authority, don't we?
Yeah.
We should, but do we? I know in my life, and I've been involved with this church for 12, 13 years, the last 6, 7 of which we've been pursuing this stuff. I run the organizations here, but do I every day remember that I should rule from my authority in heaven? No. If I've got a staff issue, if we've got a financial problem, if we've got stuff that's going wrong, what my first response is? It always, I'm going to sit in heaven, I'm going to make sure I've got a mandate, I'm going to rule from that place of authority, I'm going to do it from heaven down. Is it always that? No. No. And I've been doing this longer than you. Okay. So the first thing is, you've got to start to think about, how do I do that from heaven downwards? Yeah. So as Mike talked to you about mountains, briefly, mountains, areas of authority that we are responsible for, we call them mountains of authority, right? So within your blueprint, within your mandates, you will have inherent mountains of authority. There will be things that are your mountains of authority that are attached to your blueprint. You need to go find them. On average, there's between 7 and 12 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So we have our mountains. Mike showed you that lovely diagram that looks like, a massive dartboard with all these blobs on it. Yeah? Around the edge of that, all the blue circles were our mountains of authority. And each one of those has got a bench, and each one of those has got its specific mandates, and each one has to interact and do its part within the blueprint. Okay, so you're going to find as you go along that you've got mountains of authority that you need to have as well. We all have mantles, robes, scepters, orbs, swords, etc. in the heavenly realms, do we? Yeah? Good. Lots of nods. Crowns? Yeah, keep casting them. Yeah. So we've all got those. But what about on the earth? So Joe Public looking at you, would they know that you have heavenly mandates? Okay. Okay, we'll look at a bit of that. Because just because you haven't necessarily got something that people can see, you can carry that weight of authority, can't you? You can carry that rulership attitude, you can carry that heavenly authority, but we don't need to walk heavily in that authority on the earth. I think Mike said something like, I am a chancellor. You can't walk into a room and just go, look, I'm a heavenly chancellor. Because people will think he's a complete loon, won't they? But he has the government of that on his shoulders. He has the seal for that, and he can operate in that, but he doesn't have to walk around with, his own version of a made-up seal and a big robe on to actually function in that on earth. Could be comical if he did, you know, but he doesn't, you know, he's most often in a t-shirt. So go back to 2012, 2013, we were starting to understand Joshua generation, that sort of stuff. Is this thing crackling? Move it. Okay. And we started to try and take a look at what does kingdom living look like? When it manifests on the earth, when we bring it to earth, what does it look like? And Mike was telling us about the Joshua generation. We were looking at the characteristics of the Joshua generation. And I was sat in my office one day and just trying to get my head around, what does this actually look like on the earth? What does this actually look like on the earth? So as I said, we were exploring the Joshua generation. We were starting to understand new ecclesia. We were looking at cities of refuge, embassies of heaven, whatever you want to call them. Okay, and I was going, yeah, got a concept, got a picture. But what's it actually like to live in the reality of that on the earth? Do you think you know? I was kind of, okay, my day looks like this right now. When I function at work, this is what I got to deal with. You know, I get up in the morning and I have breakfast, I walk the dog, I come to work, it might be raining. You know, how does my day change when I understand the reality of kingdom living? And so this is where Joshua comes in. He's going to show me what it would be like without earthly government operating. And I don't know if you've ever thought about that. But whatever we think of the state, whatever we think of earthly government, it functions around us all the time, and we take it for granted, don't we? You know, there's a school system, there's a police force, there's armed services, there's tax, there's all these things that go on that we just live in the midst of that are operating around us as government. I'm going to switch mics, okay? Excuse me a sec. I've got to pull this out now. So I'll just take that off. No, it won't. Just give me that one. I'll take it off in a bit. Cool. Check. Not there. Is it there? Ooh. I've got two now. That's all right. I'll try to hold this one still. All right. Multitasking. Oh my God. Right. So, but whatever we think of the state, it functions around us, and we take it for granted, don't we? You know, there's a school system. Everything that we expect to have in life actually is kind of there, and it's been built up over centuries, hasn't it? So, how would you replace it, and with what? I was like, okay, God, that's a really challenging question. I don't know. So I thought, I know. We'll replace it with your kingdom. That's a good answer. He'll be happy with that. Well, he said, yeah, but what do you understand as my kingdom? Oh, this is getting hard. He said, so often, the kingdom of heaven on earth is portrayed like a fairy tale. We have this expectation that everything will be wonderful. We won't need to do anything, and it'll all happen just by magic. I was like, yeah. All right, you mean it won't? Yeah. So the other thing is, we think it's all beyond our control, that maybe it's unobtainable. Yeah? No? Yeah? But he said, you have to imagine the kingdom as your normal. Because you can't function from a place of government. Yeah? You can't rule every day in your life until it becomes a normal. So that's a whole new paradigm. So your thinking has to change. Your mind has to be renewed. Okay. So he said to me, kingdom things need to be seen from an everyday living perspective. Because unless it becomes part of your everyday living and life, you won't actually grow in it. You won't be able to deliver it. It will be hard to administer it because it won't be who you are. Okay. So when the world systems fall, what will daily life look like? Like, oh, wow, that's just suddenly, well, hang on. What if I can't go to the supermarket tomorrow and buy food? Well, okay, so start to get a bit freaky there. He said, well, we'll need to understand our place as sons and kings to understand our authority and our responsibility so we can function from our identity. Did you get that? Yeah. So we need to understand our authority and our responsibility so we can function from our identity. Cool. And they said, what does Joshua do? Well, that's easy. We'd already started looking at establishing cities of refuge and all stuff. So he spied out the promised land. Yes, says God. What else? He spent 40 years in the wilderness. Yes, says God. What else? Okay, this is getting tricky. He took over the mantle of leadership from Moses. Yes, he did. What else did Joshua do? Well, I thought, well, I'll just hit with a load of guns. He crossed over to the promised land, took Jericho, loads of other cities, and destroyed all the idols. Is that good enough? No. What else did he do after that? Well, he settled the promised land. He set up a system of federal government. He ran a country. Hang on a minute. What? And God went, what else? Oh, what do you mean, what else? That's enough, isn't it? No, well, what else? I'm like, okay, I'm not getting you at all here. And he said, what did his day look like? What did Joshua's day look like? When he got up in the morning, what did Joshua's day look like? Aha. Okay. In order to operate in a kingdom way, we have to see ourselves living day to day in the reality of the kingdom. Wow. So, let's imagine ourselves as Joshua for a few minutes, don't we? So what did Joshua do? Well, he was leading a nation. All right. So having established he's leading a nation, we need to think day to day. We know that life is made up of moments. Moments we spend in conferences listening to Mike or me. Moments we have a cup of coffee. Moments we deal with our family, sort our finances out, walk the dog, whatever it is. It's made of moments. So Joshua had a life, a day-to-day way of living, but he also had a way of ruling. What did that look like? Good news, he had a blueprint to establish a nation in the promised land. That's good, isn't it? That's a big blueprint, right? Okay. What went with that? Mandates. Directly from God, take the land, kill the OEaiH, set up a government. Yeah. Okay, so now I've got a blueprint. I've got my mandates. Cool. He had the authority to do it. He had the authority to rule that people. He took the mantle from Moses. It was given to him. Yeah, so he's got authority, he's got the mandates, he's got the blueprint. Should be easy, right? But he had an estimated 2 million people. And that was probably only the men they counted. They didn't include the women and children very often. So should we conservatively say there are 5 million people he was with there and having to manage? That's a bit of a mandate, that's a bit of a blueprint, right? He had challenges. So his day-to-day life with 5 million people would have looked like what? Come on, how hard can it be? How hard can it be? Well, let's look at some of the things he might have had to tackle. He had a priesthood and a tabernacle with all the religious requirements. There were quite a lot of those. So all the sacrifices, all the services and things that they had to actually provide. And they kept moving it. There wasn't somewhere. They kept picking up and moving. He had an army to equip, train, and feed. That alone is a massive task. He had a judicial system, public order, criminal and civil actions, justice to administer. He had families and all the joys that they bring. Millions of them. Yeah. Children, elderly. When they crossed over, they stopped being healthy all the time. When they crossed over, shoes wore out, clothes wore out. Food was not provided every day. Okay, they didn't have Tesco. Right? He had, when they crossed, business and commerce to think about, traders, artists, herdsmen. because people needed to start doing things that they hadn't been doing for a very long time. Shoes wear out, you need someone to make new shoes. Millions of people and animals making a mess. Just sorting out latrines for 5 million people would have been a logistical nightmare, right? It's one of the first mentions of plumbing, it's actually in the Bible back then. Right. He had administrators and officials, tribal leaders, he had decisions to make and politics to navigate. So his day, probably not quiet. His day wasn't just having fun in the army doing this. And how old was he when he was doing this? He wasn't 20 years old anymore, was he? He was more like 80 something. Okay. So he's got a lifetime experience, but he was probably looking forward to retirement somewhere in the promised land. Wasn't going to happen, was it? Okay. So all of those things were part of his blueprint. All of the authority needed were included in his mandate. And he had to keep God in the center of everything, or he could not succeed. Yeah. So what was the secret to his success? Relationship. Yeah. With who? God and people. Correct. Yeah. So when you're doing your blueprints and your mandates, you have to maintain relationship with who? God and people. You can't do it alone. Yeah. Joshua. If you read this, sorry. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. Bonus. Excellent. No one's going to be able to stand against me. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. Even better, because I know you were powerful with Moses. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Thank goodness for that. Be strong and courageous. What? Because you will lead people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Oh, okay. Be strong and very courageous. You're getting the theme. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it, from the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. On the surface, that seems really, really positive, right? It's a really strong promise. But there are conditions for success. Be strong and courageous. 3 times in 1 chapter. Do you think God meant it? Like, okay. Be careful to do everything in accordance with the law. Okay. Do not turn from it. Meditate day and night. How much of the stuff that Mike has been talking to you about is in agreement with this? He may have said it differently, he may have explained it differently, but the formula is very similar, right? Okay. So, having looked at all this and gone, okay, I'm beginning to get the picture, he said, you've got a mandate. I was like, how hard can it be? Every blueprint will address something God wants to bring under our dominion. So I knew that whatever God was going to give me would be part of our dominion that he wanted us to have control over. But we need to comprehend the practical nature of manifesting spiritual government into earthly government. That was the whole point of him taking me through the exercise with Joshua. You've got to be able to understand this is your new reality. You can't just check out and watch the X Factor, okay? So. But my experience says life gets in the way. Does life get in the way for any of you? Yeah. So how do I deal with my mandates? There are things, distractions. I've got a family, work, children, pets, shopping, holidays. Got to have a holiday. That's right. Part of my mandate. Blueprint. Have I got a mandate for a holiday? Yes. Yeah. Can I go on a cruise? Yes. Thank you. Yeah. But there are always People issues. You know, remember we've said relationship with who? God and people. No blueprint, no man is going to work without God and people. So what do people do? Occasionally they'll build you up. Occasionally, but if you're a Christian, most of the time, people who are not Christians or who do not understand where you're coming from will have complaints, criticisms, and they won't like what you're trying to do. Or they will load you down with obligations and they will fill with their expectations. Yeah, we want you to do this and we expect you to do that. Some of that obligation and expectation isn't always expressed. It's just implied. And it can be because you've got a church system that expects you to be part of a leadership team or expects you to be part of a project because you've got skills. And if you've got particular skills that they need, that maybe you're an accountant, they need someone to help with the books, they will expect you to do that. And you will feel obliged. What if it's not your mandate? Tricky, that, isn't it? Because you come up against culture then. This is one that was mentioned to me earlier on. What if my blueprint is so huge I don't know where to start? Because maintaining focus is not easy. God will very often show us massive things, or he will show us this is your thing, and then there's all these bits connected to it. Where do I start? Where do I start? The maintaining focus is not easy. God told Joshua 3 times to be courageous, which means actually you're going to require some fortitude. So if you're not feeling strong enough, get strong enough before you start. Build up your spirit. Yeah. Deal with them soul issues. Okay. If you're easily offended, I think Mike said yesterday, yeah, lots of people don't like what he teaches. Yeah. Bothered? No, he's got past that. He's dealt with all of that stuff. He knows who God says he is. He knows his identity, so he's not bothered. But if you know that sometimes people are going to criticize you, cause you problems, you've got to be strong enough to say, I'm on track with God. I know my blueprint. I know my mandates. I know my authority. I will bless them and keep going. Right? So Joshua had to know his identity. He had to know his destiny, his authority, maintain relationship with God, or he simply would not have succeeded. Okay. Mike says there will be opposition. He's right. Whenever God does something new, it challenges what already exists. I guarantee that some of the blueprints and mandates that you're going to be given will challenge things that are already in existence. They will. They will either challenge other organizations that are doing the same thing that you want to do or have been told to do, and they could be churches, or they could be charities, or they will challenge individuals who will be downright offended that you're doing something that they don't think you should be. So you're already going to come up against opposition the minute you accept that mandate. Who's experienced that? We've had lots of that here. I think Mike might have mentioned last night that when we started the projects here, we were just seen as a bunch of do-good Christians. You're getting in the way, you're meddling in things you don't understand, you're just trying to convert everybody. We don't think you're trustworthy, we don't think you're professional. That's a good word. I'm sorry, you're not qualified. You'll come up against that one. What qualifies you to do this work? We're social workers. What qualifies you to do this work? We're probation officers. What qualifies you to do this work? Good question. God does. They don't like that as an answer, so I tend not to say it out loud. Okay. Right. Another one that I really love, this is from a pastor friend of ours called Mike Bryant. He says, you can tell the strength of a word, a mandate or a direction from God, by the strength of the opposition. The more opposition you encounter, the more God wants you to do it, and the less the enemy wants you to do it. So sometimes opposition is encouragement, okay? Did you get that one? Yeah. You're going to need to write that down. Sometimes opposition is encouragement. Yeah? Right. So, when you get your blueprint, you must see yourself doing, living, and being a part of your blueprint. You must carry it in your heart, nurture it in your soul, and be fired up in your spirit. Carry it in your heart, nurture it in your soul, and be fired up in your spirit. If any one of those three things don't apply, it's probably not yours to pick up. If you do not carry it in your heart, you're not going to have authority over it. If you do not want to nurture it, brood over it, meditate on it, incubate it, it's not yours. And if you're not excited and fired up about it, you're not going to succeed. So don't do it. All right? Being governmental will require legislating, assigning, and administering every day. Every day. Right. So you must see yourself doing, living, being, carry it, and this must be your new paradigm. This must be your new normal. Do you think that that is what is possible for you? Do you see yourself moving to that place if you're not there already? There's some doubtful looks around the room. Okay. But come on, this is exciting times. The things that God is sharing with us right now, this is exciting. We get to participate, not just to observe. We get to administer. We get to be more than just the ones who try to pray it down. Yeah, for decades, people have tried to pray it down. No, we now get to go and administer it down. We get to go and implement it. We have to bring it from heaven to earth. We have to do the manifesting, making it clear and obvious. Manifest it, make it clear and obvious. We need to operate in dual realms. We also need to be proficient in both. Am I proficient in both? On a good day, honestly, on a good day, yeah. On a very tired day, probably not. But that is the reality. That is the reality of what will happen when you pick up a blueprint and you get your mandates. You will have good days and bad days. But it's always exciting times. Always exciting times. So, we're supposed to finish in about 20 minutes, but I'm going to run through some of this stuff. So, as we started a little late. Developing blueprints and earthing them out. What do I mean by earthing them out? Making it happen on earth. Because this is where the rubber meets the road. So Mike promised you lots of things yesterday. Now I'm just going to do this with you tomorrow, right? Love it when he does that. Okay. So, as we move into this next bit, okay, so what's it about? We're going to try, by the end of the day, to get you an outline understanding of a written blueprint and some of its benefits. And I say written specifically, because you may actually have been given a blueprint in heaven. If you were given a blueprint in heaven, what was it given to you on? A memory stick? A scroll. Remember those? Yes. Most of us will have been given something on a scroll. Why are scrolls significant? Because you can eat them. Yes, you can eat them. But there's something even more fundamental. There's a clue. It is written. There's something about it being written that makes it concrete. There's something about it being written that makes it powerful. So when we've got our blueprints, when we're thinking about our blueprints and our mandate, it really helps if we write them down. Yeah, because that helps to make them real. That helps to just bring them onto the earth, because suddenly it's in a form that somebody else can see. Yeah, assuming they can read. But there are some things to be aware of. We'll go over those things to be aware of. All right. And hopefully by 5 o'clock, we'll have actually made a start on developing your blueprint and identified some further actions for developing your blueprint within your organization or on your own when you leave. So I'll give you stuff to take away to do. You're free to do it or not. But if you want to develop it, if you actually are serious about getting your blueprint and mandates out there and making them turn into earthly based projects or services or charities or ecclesias or whatever they are, you need to go and do some homework. All right. But proceed with care. So let me run you through some cautionary things, some things based on experience of actually doing this stuff on the earth. Okay. There are always challenges that come without working heavenly blueprints in a less than perfect world. You'll see it in heaven and you'll want to mirror it on the earth. Some of the things we see in heaven are, well, they're perfect, right? They are born in this environment which is full of all the resources that it needs. So when you see these things in heaven, they can be like, wow, that is just amazing. And then you've got to bring it to the earth, and the earth isn't the same. The earth is not the same. Has anybody noticed it's not a perfect world? Okay, it's not. So you have to start working from where you are. But there are common factors that are reasons why projects or blueprints or mandates or anything else don't work and why they don't happen. So I'm going to tell you a few things that are the reasons, the common factors why projects fail. The first one is you'd think really obvious, and that is there is no clearly agreed definition of what the thing is and it isn't. So two people can feel they've got a blueprint to work together. They can be husband and wife, right? We've got this blueprint. This is the blueprint. But when you start to get them to talk about it, and particularly when you get them to write it down, they may not mean the same thing at all. Right? So what you have to do is make sure the thing you're defining is the thing that you actually mean to define. And if there's more than one of you involved in the blueprint, you all have to agree what the thing is. It has to be the same to all of you, or you're all going to be pulling in different ways, different directions, and to different purposes. Does that make sense? Because if I think my mandate is to build a tower, and you agree that our mandate is to build a tower, and my version of the tower is the Tower of London, and your version of the tower is a shard, we're both building towers, but they're not the same thing. So until we actually look at our blueprints and you go, oh, medieval castle, ultra modern building, you don't know what you're getting. Okay. The next thing on that list, on the bottom, the caveat on there is avoid mission creep. We know what mission creep is? Yeah. Mission creep is a military term, really, where you go into, just take a look at the Gulf Wars for a start. You go into a country, into a war zone with a specific objective. We're just going to go and do this. So we're going to go in and we're going to displace these particular insurgents. That's what we're going to go and do. And you go and do that, and then you suddenly find, ooh, actually, we've got problems here and here and here as well. So what we'll do is, we'll just go and deal with that bit too. Oh, that's thrown up another problem. So now we've got a humanitarian problem. So we better go and deal with that bit as well. And then you find that all your resources are stretched. Your logistics aren't working and your troops are absolutely worn out. What happened? What happened was you took on other things that you didn't have the mandate for, that you didn't have the authority for, just because they were there. And that's called mission creep, because it seems like a good idea at the time. And we've been guilty of that here. We've done things here because we've seen a need, we've responded to it. And then it's not worked. And then we've gone, God, what was all that about? And he went, wasn't on your mandate, wasn't your blueprint, shouldn't have done that. Oh, we overstepped. That's mission creep. So if you do not clearly define the thing that you're going to do, you can easily overstep the boundaries of your authority, the boundaries of your mandate outside your jurisdiction, and end up in a mess. Okay, so you have to avoid mission creep, and you do that by defining what it is you're supposed to do, but also sometimes what it isn't that you're supposed to do. Okay. One of the biggest mistakes people make is not doing this. They don't set out a constitution or governance arrangements. So back to the rule: relationship with God, relationship with people. We want to manage that relationship with people when we're out working a blueprint, out working our mandates in any kind of organizational way. We need to make sure that everybody's clear on the rules. So you have to agree with the rules. Now, you can ask God for the rules, but you can also put some of your own in, because of course you are ruling, administering, supervising, and responsible, right? So you have to come up with some of those things. Governance and a constitution are the foundation from which you can then build. Okay. You also have to agree who has authority and responsibility. So who can make decisions and who can't. And if there's specific areas that people are qualified in, and you're not, do that, you don't, okay? Why? You need to avoid a mutiny or a hostile takeover. Because I've seen ecclesias, projects, churches, charities set up, work like mad, everybody thinks they're in the same direction. Then you get a difference of opinion. A difference of opinion about we should this, and somebody else says, no, we shouldn't. What happens then? Well, either it splits or somebody decides that they're going to take it off you. So you get a mutiny or you get a hostile takeover. That's not good relationship, but it can all be avoided by setting it up correctly in the first place. Think these things through. Yes, we have to have grace for each other and we have to expect the best of each other, but actually human nature often wins out. You need to understand and mitigate the risks and liabilities inherent in any project. So when you are looking at your project, when you're thinking about what it's going to do on the earth, you need to be in a place to say, what if this goes pear-shaped? For those of you who don't know what pear-shaped means, it's kind of skewy. Instead of a circle, it's pear-shaped. Yeah, so what happens if this goes wrong? What happens if this doesn't go the way we think it's going to go and we end up falling foul of legislation and rules that we didn't even know existed? Whoops. Okay. So you have to have contingencies, but you have to look at the risks and liabilities before you start. Liabilities is really important. If you're going to be a trustee, you're going to be a director, if you're going to be an owner, you carry not only heavenly authority, you carry legal authority. You get some things wrong, you can end up in very serious problems with courts and even in prison. Depending on what the laws are in your particular country, the consequences can be from severe to like really, really severe. So anything that's going to work with beneficiaries, anything that's going to work with vulnerable people, anything that's going to work with even just the public. If you want to do anything with children, you want to do anything with old people, you want to do anything with cats and flipping dogs, you need to be aware that there will be a rule somewhere that you have to follow. Safeguarding. Safeguarding a few years ago for us was a word that was always thrown at us. As an organisation, because you're not a public sector or government funded or even a government run organisation, we're concerned about safeguarding. You work with vulnerable adults. Yes, we do. We work with addicts, we work with homeless people, we work with people with mental health issues, we work with people with massive complex needs. We're concerned about that. What are your safeguarding protocols? What are yours? Oh, what? We're governmental, we're probation, we're drug services, we're whatever. What are yours? We won't work with you unless we know. Okay, so we have to figure that out. Policies and procedures. Policies and procedures. Dull, really dull, but incredibly important. Incredibly important. If you do not have the right policies and procedures, you will not get to do partnership working. If you do not have the right policies and procedures and something goes wrong, you'll get hung out to dry. You really will. You have to make sure your administration covers earthly administration as well as heavenly. You really have to. Financial management. Don't worry, you'll get all these slides. Financial management. Who knows that money is the root of all evil? It's not. The love of money is the root of all evil. But who knows that in a charitable organisation or in a project, money can be a contentious subject. Where do you get it from? How do you manage it? Who gets the right to spend it? And who's going to keep you accountable for what you've done with it? Money. Good financial management is critical to outworking any project, because you won't get any funding, you won't get any grant funding, you won't get public donations, you won't be able to get any earned income, you won't get any commissioning if people think that you're turning the money into a Mercedes. We've been accused so many times, you're just taking the money and buying new cars for your pastor. What? How'd you work that out? I think for the first, I don't know, how many years did Mike run around in like a 20-year-old car? Yeah. He finally pays his mortgage off and buys a new car. We were accused of taking all the donations and giving it to him to buy a car. Nonsense. But people will make false accusations, and sometimes people will think there's no smoke without fire and we better investigate. So you, as Christians, will already be viewed as suspicious. You are suspicious people because you're trying to convert everybody to your faith, right? And you're sticking your nose in where it does not belong. Because we are the government and we know what we're doing and we do not need your help. That's why there are thousands of charities, of course. Right. Financial management, compliance. Compliance, wow. Governance, trustee rules, Companies House, Charity Commission. I'm not aware of what the other things are in Canada or United States or other countries, but you will have something very similar. There will be rules, there will be organizations managed by court systems that if you get them wrong, will leave you in serious trouble. In this country, Charity Commission. There was a big charity kids club that went to the wall last year, year before, can't remember, right? Government gave it millions, millions, millions. No one was managing the finances. They were doing amazing things. They had a fantastically charismatic leader, but nobody on their board was powerful enough to say, we should stop this. We're not doing things right. They took 16 million off the government and then went bust. Wow, heads must have rolled. Okay, but poor financial management, poor compliance. If they'd been following the Charity Commission rules, that should never have happened. HR, human resources. Probably the most. Yeah, I don't say a lot about that, do I? I could just see from around the room, everybody went, oh. And the last one, yes, we can learn, but lack of skills or experience. One of the biggest problems I have come across with people who are very excited and feel they're motivated and God-given mandates and blueprints and directions often lack skills or experience. I was asked to accompany somebody to a meeting earlier this year where they were working with a local authority. So a local government authority, and they were trying to get a project started to help the homeless, and they went, Freedom, you do that. Freedom's good at that. You come. Can you come and give us some advice? So I was, yeah, all right. So I went to the meeting, and I went to the meeting with the local authority, and I have never seen two more hostile people in my life as the representatives of the local authority. The person I was with is a charismatic character, very driven, very passionate about her project, understands all the issues of homelessness, but had no clue about how government, local government, works in relation to homelessness. So was going in and trying to kick the door down. You need to do something about this. It's an appalling that these things are happening. It's an absolute disgrace that you're doing stuff. I know you've got budgets, blah, blah, blah. And she went in like a bull in a china shop, right? I then came in behind and they were like, who are you? So, well, actually, my name's Nigel Harris. I'm the Managing Director, CEO of the Freedom Centre in North Devon. Oh, we know who you are. Instant change in atmosphere. Why? Why did another local authority, not ours, know who I was? Why did they know who Freedom Centre are? Because we've spent 12 years building a reputation of working with our local authority in partnership, not opposition. We spend our time understanding their issues and fixing them for them. Okay? Those people need to be loved just as much as our clients and beneficiaries do. The poor people in that office were under the cosh from their directors. They were having budget cuts. They were stressed to the max. And the last thing they needed was some loudmouth Christian telling them what they should and shouldn't be doing. So I didn't. Tell me your issues. Tell me what the problem is. Let's understand where we can have mutual agreement and how we can go forward. At the end of the meeting, they invited us back. Yeah. And we started talking to them about how we can actually work with them in South Devon and do all the other things around there. That was the point. The person that was with who went, how did you do that? Well, because I got experience. The one thing she did right that day was take me with her. Yeah. Because she was on the verge of being kicked out and told never to come back again. They'd only seen her because she badged them so much they couldn't make another excuse. But the change was that experience of being able to talk to them and lead them through and tell them what we do and how we do it made all the difference to the relationship. Yeah, because even local authorities are people too. Right. Failure to understand the environment you were operating in. Very often we want to just pile in, don't we? Yeah, I've seen this, it's very exciting, God's told me I'm going to go do it, but we don't always understand the opposition, spiritually or earthly, because there's going to be competition, there are going to be statutory agencies, other churches. If you come across that one, we're already doing something. You will come across that one. Other charities. You won't believe the amount of competition between charities, particularly when there's grant funding or commissioning involved. Yeah? Just the general public. We don't want you here. We don't want what you're bringing. Yeah. Now, some of that stuff you can deal with. You can go into the heavens. You can legislate for. You can do court cases about. You can release angels. You can release things to change the atmosphere. But you've still got to have the right attitude when you approach it on the earth. Okay? So, underestimating how much work it will be. So many people get involved. They start to understand the scale. They start to do the thing. And then they find it's really hard work. Yes, you can operate from a place of rest. But when you're pulling 14 days, sometimes that's very hard. Yeah. So don't underestimate how much work it will be. If you're going to build something, if you're going to build something meaningful, if you're going to build something that's going to have endurance, you're going to have to put the structures in. You're going to have to put the groundwork in. Like when you're building anything, you have to dig a foundation. Now, if you're smart, you get a machine to do it. If you're not smart, you do it by hand. But either way, you're going to dig that foundation. If you've already got experience of running or managing things in your life, if you're a manager of a project, or if you already run a business, if you've already got something that you're supervising, you will know that there are ways that you can get help to do things. And I would really advise you to do that. Yeah. All of these things need to be done when you've got an organization, even if it's just 2 people. You've got to do admin. You've got to understand your HR, particularly if you're employing someone. Employment, wow, that's another thing. Yeah. Volunteers are one level. Employees are another. Right. Finances, compliance, marketing, communications, operational delivery, all that stuff will come down to you if you hold the picture, if you've got the blueprint. So, a that'll do approach won't cut it. So if you go, that'll do, that'll come back to bite you at some point. It really will. Naivety. Oh, this is a tricky one to address with Christians, you know. You're saying I don't know what I'm doing. You're saying I'm not aware. Yes, I am. Sorry. Relying purely on God's grace to cover our backs. That's a very old model. Have you realized that? After being here for a couple of days, you must realize that if you think you could just go, God will fix it, you're now wrong. You are now completely wrong. He may have done that in the past, but he will not do that once you're aware that you have a responsibility to be sons and kings. Because you know now. And once you know, you can't just go, help. I'll pray it down. He'll fix it. No. You need to now administer and supervise, right? So as soon as you become aware, you become responsible. And I'm sorry, people, I can now witness you are all aware. Abdication is not ruling. You can't go, oh, I think I'll opt out. Once you've said yes, and you are taking on that mandate, and you're operating, you're supposed to be the king or the ruler, you can't abdicate. What happens if something abdicates? What is abdication? I'm just going to step off that throne and leave it void. What will step in if you step out? What will step in? Yeah, chaos. Absolutely. Or something worse, demonic. You know, you will give up your seat to what? Yeah. So, I think you all could do with a coffee now. It's 11:15. Time for a break? Is that okay? Cool.